More now, my conversation with former Secretary of State Condoleezza Rice. She is a CBS News contributor. I sat down with Rice at California's Stanford University. There she teaches political science. We looked at the foreign policy questions facing America. That includes how the United States should respond to Iran's new president, Hassan Rouhani. Let me turn to Iran. They have a new president there. Yeah. Some people think he's a moderate.
Yes.
I mean, is there a moderate regime possible?
This is a slow track in Iran.
Right.
When you talk about being a moderate in Iran, you're talking about a very narrow part of the political spectrum, and Khamenei is still the power in Iran. And so the question is, what are Khamenei's preferences? Now, the perhaps good news is that if Rouhani really does have a belief that he needs to change the internal politics of Iran, that he needs to give a little bit more space to the people of Iran, that he needs to fix the economy. Perhaps through that, you can get some openings on the foreign policy side. But I would not begin to believe that this is someone who is going to immediately begin to change the foreign policy profile
But should
of
the
Iran.
United States take advantage of what might be a small opening with him? And if so, what should they do?
First of all, keep in place the sanctions that are there so that there continues to be pressure for change in Iran. Right. Secondly, by all means, make Iran the offer that has been made repeatedly since 2006 and see if the change in circumstances politically in Iran and the fact that the Iranian economy is in such trouble, let's see if that gives Rouhani reason to make a deal.
Should there be more sanctions?
I think we can continue
ratchet up
to
the sanctions?
Absolutely. We continue to move the sanctions forward. When it looks as if the Iranians are responding to the new environment, I would, one by one, begin to release the sanctions. But if you release the pressure now in the hopes that Rouhani is going to be a different kind of Iranian, you're going to remove the very pressures that may be leading to changes in the way that Iran thinks about its prospect.
Let me move to Syria. What options do we have in Syria at this stage?
Well, we're very late in the game now, and the options...
Meaning we should have done more earlier.
Yes, earlier on.
The president made a mistake in not arming the Syrian rebels.
We made a mistake in not arming the Syrian rebels when there were rebels who were more associated with the political agenda that is in our interest, a more inclusive Syria,
and now
one that
it's
is
too
not
late?
well, one that's not dominated by Islamists. Well, now on the ground, Assad is on the offensive. The strongest rebel forces are Islamist forces, in fact, hardcore Islamist forces. And so the options aren't very good. But I still think at this point you have to arm rebels that we have vetted, that we believe may have a political agenda more.
But is it possible to arm those rebels and the arms not falling into the hands of those who are Islamists?
It's going to be very hard. But you don't have any other option at this point.
What do you think's happened to the Arab Spring?
I'm one who believes that we can't have a snapshot view of the changes that are going on in the Middle East.
So the fact that it's turned to an Arab winter is not a judgment you hold?
Right, because hopefully there will be a spring after the winter.
But you look in Libya, you look in Egypt, you look in Syria, you look even in Tunisia where they just had an assassination.
Charlie, when people seize their rights rather than through reform, when you have revolution, it's always chaotic, it's always difficult. The United States of America, of all countries, ought to recognize that it takes time. Yeah. Do you think when the Founding Fathers said, "We the people," they meant me? It takes time. Also on the diplomatic front, you have Secretary of State Kerry pushing hard to have and to ignite a dialogue between the Israelis and the Palestinians. Yes. Does it have a chance? Is he right to try to do this now? Well, Secretary Kerry is certainly right to try to get the Israelis and the Palestinians talking again. The situation in the Middle East is so vastly different now that it's hard to know precisely where this is going to go. I'm never going to be one who's a naysayer about trying to get the Israelis and the Palestinians to peace. I used to be asked, Charlie, well, is this a good time to go to the Middle East with all of the problems? Yeah. I would say if you wait for a good time in the Middle East, you'll never find it. Yes. And so more power to John Kerry for trying. Interesting. The Iran is a fascinating story because you don't really know and how much room he has because of, as you noted, the relationship with the Supreme Leader.
Right, and how much this new moderate president, and as the former Secretary of State pointed out, Khamenei is still denouncing the United States and denouncing U.S. as playing a role in the Mideast negotiations. But Do you think that, based on your conversations, that the U.S. will let this new president in Iran give him some time to sort of consolidate things domestically?
I would assume so, because I mean, he needs to. The stronger he is, the more that he can make some positive changes. So they'll probably do that, I would assume. The interesting thing, it is such an interesting country. You know, I mean, it's rich in cultural history. It's a place that has enormous power in the region.
And as you were out in California last week, Elizabeth Palmer has been reporting from Iran on the end. She has noted, too, the economic embargo has affected everything. It's also now affecting medical supplies. I mean, it is cutting so deep into people in Iran that it may force some change soon. Yeah, it is clearly a case where sanctions have worked, and it clearly is something that he has to do. I mean, a new leader has to make sure he has a good relationship with people, and they're suffering from the sanctions.